Howdy, Pilgrim. It's Mateus Maximus, aka Matty Mills. I am in the magical mystery forest of destiny, and today I want to talk to you about what I believe is the fastest way to quit your 9-to-5 job. All right, maybe you're working right now in the rat race and you just can't take it anymore. It's so frustrating and you just want to leave that job, right? Maybe you hate your boss completely. Maybe you are the boss and you just don't like your employees. Whatever it is, I want to give you what I believe is the easiest path to actually leave your job within the next 90 days. All right, so the reason I have to share this video is because I've mentioned before, right? I used to work in this cubicle job, and I actually worked in that job and hustled so hard, and I'm like, okay, I want to get promoted in this role. Like, I want to move up in this company. How do I do that? And so I just take on more and more responsibility, and I'd apply for jobs and I wouldn't get them, which was super frustrating. There were actually jobs, by the way, I'd apply for in that company. And what would end up happening is it would just be, I'd like spend all this time coming up with a resume. I'd send it and be like, oh man, it's going to be amazing. I can't wait. They're going to see the resume. They're going to be like, this guy's amazing. We're going to just hire him instantly, right? But I'd send out that resume and I'd hear crickets, right? I wouldn't even get an email from the person who posted that job or the HR department. And I was like, oh man, okay. And I didn't blame them. I was basically like, okay, this is on me, right? Again, I'm thinking in the wrong way, right? I'm like, okay, what has value to them, right? How can I get in there? How can they actually become aware of me, right? And so what I started doing is I just started taking on more responsibility and just applying for more jobs and really just, instead of saying no, which I was really bad at, right? I remember there was one of my bosses at the time. She was like, hey man, like we want you to do this thing, you know, it's gonna give you some more skills and give you a little bit more responsibility. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And again, she's like, okay, dude, like, you know, and then later on she's like, hey man, like I think your attitude is the problem here. And then at first I'm like, oh, it's not my attitude. It's not my attitude at all. It's you. And then after a few months, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm the problem. So what I essentially did was took this cubicle job. I ended up eventually getting promoted into another job. But then I had this boss who was like just an absolute nightmare. And what I hated is that in the winter, I would have to basically walk in such cold temperatures in Canada to the subway station, get on the subway car in this like jam-packed subway car with all these bankers who looked super depressed and all these people working downtown who just hated their lives completely. Then I would have to go downtown, be in this car, and the way I would tune people out is, to be honest, I would just listen to audiobooks and listen to motivational stuff, because I would see people on their phones and they would always be like scrolling through Facebook and Instagram or Twitter, or even worse, they'd just be like playing Candy Crush Saga on their phone. So what I did is I took my phone and basically turned it into a learning device, right? And I would also do that at the gym. Instead of listening to music at the gym, or even just when I would be out cycling and exercising, I would listen to self-help books, psychology books, business books, entrepreneurship books, just again, educating myself, right? And with, again, the end goal in mind, being like, okay, I'm eventually going to, you know, start my own business. I don't know what that business is going to look like. But man, going to that job and then being tucked in this little cubicle sardine, it was just, I just felt so like, I don't know, claustrophobic, to be honest, right? I would always be like, oh, am I taking up other people's space? And now, man, like, now that I've been on my own for 2 years, man, like, I don't know, I feel anything is possible. I just feel more empowered than ever before. Like, it would take so much for me if I saw a goal and other people would be like, dude, that's impossible, man. Like, you're gonna scale Everest. I'd be like, yeah, dude, I'm gonna scale it like 100 times. And I didn't always think like that. Again, it was a gradual process, and I had to kind of accomplish little goals and get little results, and then that just kind of snowballed, and that just increased my self-confidence and just, again, gave me way more self-esteem. But again, going back to that job, right? I'm working this crappy job and I'm like, man, how do I quit this job? Like, I have this boss, and I just hit a point where I was so stressed, and I had some stuff happening in my personal life with my family. I hit a point where I was so stressed and I was losing sleep every night, and I'm like, man, like, how do I escape this? And so again, I went on Google. I'm like, you know, how to leave your 9-to-5 job, how to do this, right? Easiest businesses to start. And even then, I'd read all these books on business. What was so frustrating for me was that I'd read so many books about business, and I still didn't have like that idea that I wanted to, right? I'd read this guy, Chris Gilbo, has this book, $100 Startups. And even then I'm like, oh, these businesses seem too risky, right? It's like books on how to start your own franchise. And I'm like, oh man, but it requires so much capital to start that business. And I'm like, man, like, what would be the easiest thing? So I remember one of the first things that I actually started was I did e-commerce, right? I'm like, oh, cool. Like I started building some websites myself and, just to kind of practice building websites. And I wasn't great at the time at doing that. Now I'm so much better at building funnels for people, but I don't know, dude. For me, like building websites back then, I was absolutely terrible. I wasn't a great writer, but I don't know. I was just like, okay, I'm going to start doing this. So I started building, like, I think one of my first businesses is someone said, they're like, hey man, you should start, e-commerce, start like a service-based business. So what I was doing is, and I made a huge mistake, is I started to build these e-commerce stores, right? So I built one e-commerce store, and then I had these other two service-based websites that I had, and I was building those. So I'm building like 3 or 4 businesses at the same time. And then the e-commerce business, like, I don't know, I got it to make a few sales, and then I'm like, okay, this one's making that. Wouldn't it make sense to just build another e-commerce business and then build another one? So I had like these 5 e-commerce stores that I'm running, and then I had a couple of other websites that I was going. And I'm, losing money at this point. I'm not making any money, and I'm just like, oh man, this would be bad. And so, again, one of my internet mentors, one of the first people I invested in, they're like, dude, like, you just need to start a service-based business, right? It's so much easier to just start a service-based business. But what he told me is he gave me kind of 5 simple steps that he recommended that you kind of take on your journey. And Robert Kiyosaki has his own framework, what he calls the cash flow quadrants. But I like these 5 steps, right? So step number 1 was you need to identify your outcomes, right? You need to be like, okay, how much are my daily expenses right now, right? How much am I spending per month, and how much money am I making right now? Could I scale that back a little bit? And so that's essentially what I did. And I'm like, okay, if I were to make like, $5,000 per month eventually, that would be perfect with me. I can always go from there. But I think like if I hit that $5,000 a month, it's a little bit more than I'm making right now, right? It's a little bit more than I'm making right now. But if I hit that $5,000 a month, that would allow me to kind of leave my job and then still live fairly comfortably. And then again, I can make more money after that, but that's kind of what my outcome and goal was, all right? Some people it's gonna be a little bit less, some it's gonna be more, right? Maybe you're a C-suite executive right now and you're making hundreds of thousands. You're like, oh man, how would I build a business? And like, I'm making like $1 million a year right now. I'm the CEO of this company, but I just absolutely hate it because I have to spend so much time away from my family and I have so much responsibility and I'm working like 80 hours a week. Like, oh, how do I escape that? So again, it's like, okay, what are your outcomes, right? Are you spending way too much money on stupid stuff that you don't need right now to impress people that you don't like? Are you doing that right now? Oh, you are doing that? Okay, then again, scale it back. Maybe you have some stuff that you could sell that again would give you some cash that you can invest into actual assets instead of stuff that are liabilities. So that was kind of my outcome. I'm like, okay, I need to figure out a way to make $5,000 per month because that way I can live fairly comfortably. All right, so that was kind of like the first thing that I had. Next was I need to actually, step number 2 is I need to choose a niche and a business idea. And so with this, I'm like, okay, you know what? Like it would probably make more sense if I had, a service-based business, right? That's what, again, my mentor at the time recommended. He's like, dude, you should just start like a service-based business. There's no overhead whatsoever. And this is where I made the mistake because I'm like, okay, I'm going to build websites for people and I'm going to do that at the same time as running all these other e-com stores and figuring out how to run Facebook ads and YouTube ads and SEO and all this stuff. But if I'd kind of just focused on specifically copywriting, I would have saved myself like so much time, to be honest, right? So that's essentially, step number 2, right? Step number 3 is basically, you want to really understand like who the avatar is and come up with your offer, right? It's like, okay, I have this awesome service, right? Who are the people out there who would actually buy this specific service from me, right? If I go out there and I look at people who need copywriting, right? Like, maybe there's a specific topic, maybe there's a specific niche right now who are in dire need of copywriters, and maybe I could, again, be their go-to guy that they're hiring for all sorts of things, right? So that's essentially what I did, right? I identified like a very small sub-niche that I could actually become kind of the main core copywriter for, and then again, I just started writing for those people specifically. I have expanded into other niches after that, but again, I started writing in a very, very specific niche, okay? And then so, once I kind of had the business idea identified, I had my outcomes, I had the person I was targeting, I had to actually do all the marketing and sales, right? Which was number 4. I'm like, okay, how am I going to generate traffic? How am I going to generate leads? And then when I do have those leads, how am I going to convert those leads into paying clients and customers? So what I started doing is I started just going out on Facebook, and I just started going into little groups and networking with people, right? Commenting on their stuff, posting some valuable content. And then people in those groups, they would start to randomly message me being like, hey, you seem to know a lot about copywriting in this specific topic. Like, hey man, like, can you help me out? Can you give me a strategy? Can you give me some tips? And I'd be like, yeah, man, sure. You know what? Like, let's book a call together, right? And so I did that in Facebook groups. I went on all sorts of freelancer sites and just kind of created this whole funnel for a way to me to get leads for free. Because at that point, I'm like, okay, I've been spending money on ads for other stuff, and I'm sure there's a way for me to just generate customers for free just by using my social media profiles. And again, by listing myself on freelancer websites, right? So that's kind of, the essential, those are kind of like the steps that I took, right? So again, anyone could basically take those steps and easily do that thing, right? Now, the last step, and this is the one that I struggle with the most in the entire world, is the automation, all right? How do you create this business that just automatically runs 24/7 without you actually having to lift a finger and without you being in the business? I'm sure you've heard this saying 1,000 times right now, which is, you don't want to be working on your business, or you don't want to be working in your business. You want to be working on your business, right? And whenever I hear that, I die a little bit inside, because I'm like, oh man, like that's so me right now, right? I have all these clients coming to me, and I literally have 2 people coming to me right now, and I haven't set up the automation to make sure that when I do get leads, they're taken care of. So they're dealing with someone, they're gonna be able to book a call quickly. They're going to be able to speak with a salesperson very quickly. They're going to be on a sales call very quickly. Once they're going to get the proposal quickly. When they do sign up for the proposal, they're going to be identified. They're going to be given a project manager. Project manager is going to take care of them. They're going to have the fulfillment. And then after the fulfillment takes place, they're going to be sold into other services, and they're going to be told to give reviews for the business and shoot a video testimonial. So with me, I haven't been that great at that, right? But again, I've gone through step 1 through 4. And dude, I'm in the process right now of looking for a coach that can help me with the automation specifically right now. So if that's you, holler at your boy. But I had to kind of go through each of the steps one by one and then get to that last step, which was the automation part, right? And I actually just invested in a course, and basically this talks about how you actually use systems and people to actually scale your business so that you're not working in your business. And I feel for me that's going to be hard, because I've always had this employee mindset where I've always looked for other people for leadership, when I realized as an entrepreneur over the last 2 years, like, hey dude, you know what, man? Like, no one else is going to do this for you. You just need to suck it up and take the horse by the rings and just do this thing yourself, right? Figure out how to automate everything. And by doing so, I've come to a point right now where my thing is, like, I have too much money, and I'm like, okay, how do I spend some of this money to buy some of my time back? That's kind of at the point that I've come to with the automation. I think that in books like, what's that book called? The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. He gives you a good overview on automation, but he doesn't really give you the execution, right? He doesn't show you like, hey, how do I hire a virtual assistant and how do I actually keep them on, right? Because I've gone and tried to find good virtual assistants before, but it's never actually worked out, right? And in some cases, they're just asking me to pay way too much, and I'm like, yeah, that's not possible. So it's like, how do I find a good virtual assistant that's actually good at what I need them to do, that's going to do it while I'm sleeping, and so that I don't even have to think about it, right? Because I don't want to build a business where I have like 80 people coming to me and I'm just working what I'm doing right now, working like 60, 70, 80 hours a week in some cases. I just want that business to run 24/7, 365 days a year without me having to do anything, right? And I know that's like, oh, the passive income lifestyle is absolutely impossible. I know I'm still gonna have to work a couple of hours per week, but in my mind now I've kind of hit the point again where I'm like, okay, I've done through steps 1 through 4. How do I do that automation part? For me, that's the missing piece, and I know for a lot of people, especially if you're an employee, that's going to be the hardest thing, right? So you can easily do this in 90 days, right? Step 1 through 4, I think it's like, okay, what's my outcome? I need to make like 10 grand per month. Boom, dude, awesome, super sweet, right? Next thing, okay, like, what niche am I going to go in, right? What service am I going to sell? Okay, cool. I'm going to, I don't know, build websites for people. Awesome, man. I'm going to build websites specifically for people who build pools. All right, there we go. Awesome. Okay, who are those people? Like, how do I find those people? Like, who are the buyers in this market? Who are these business owners who actually need that specific service? Okay, awesome. Go out and find those people. And then again, it's like, okay, now how do I do the sales and marketing for this thing? Okay, boom, boom. All right, well, these people, you know what? I could just build a simple one-page opt-in and run some Google ads and I can get traffic that way, right? And then again, once you have that, you've actually started to make some sales. Take that money, don't spend it on frilly things, invest that into the automation part. And that way you're buying back your time instead of wasting and working ridiculous hours per week. You're only working a few hours per week on your business instead of in your business. So I hope you liked today's video. If you did, I want you to hit that like button and I want you to leave a comment below letting me know if you're actually going to follow through and take these 5 steps. Maybe you have some other steps that you want to add. Maybe you feel you can condense it even further. I'd really love to hear your feedback. And consider subscribing to this channel. Consider hitting that bell notification so you're notified every single time a new video drops. My name is Matty Mills, aka Matthias Maximus. I will see you next time, and I want you to be blessed and I want you to be grateful.